हेलो गाइस, वेलकम टू बिटकॉइन हब। मैं हूं भाविक, मेरे साथ है निहाल। और आज का पॉडकास्ट बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग होने वाला है क्योंकि आज के पॉडकास्ट में हमारे गेस्ट है जेटकिंग कंपनी के सीएफओ मिस्टर सिद्धार्थ भारवानी। जेटकिंग वो इंडिया की सबसे फर्स्ट पब्लिक लिस्टेड कंपनी है जिसने अपनी बैलेंस शीट में, जिसने अपनी ट्रेजरी में बिटकॉइन बाई किया है। सो इस पॉडकास्ट में हमने काफ़ी बिटकॉइन के रिगार्डिंग, इंडिया में क्या फ्यूचर है उसके रिगार्डिंग काफ़ी बात करी है। इंडिया में बिटकॉइन के लिए एजुकेशन में क्या काम हो रहा है और क्या आगे होने वाला है और जेटकिंग उसमें क्या रोल प्ले कर रहा है उसके बारे में भी काफ़ी डिस्कस किया है। और भी काफ़ी इंटरेस्टिंग बातें करी है। सो वीडियो आपको अच्छा लगे तो आप लाइक करो, शेयर करो, चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करो एंड या वॉच द वीडियो। थैंक यू।
Hi Siddharth, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Uh, Thank you for your valuable time. I know it's you're very busy, and हमारी बात हुई थी couple of months ago when the announcement actually happened that Jetking was, having considering Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies for its treasury, but mainly Bitcoin. And इस पे Bitcoin मीना में बहुत चर्चा भी हुई थी. We saw Max Kaiser interviewing Jetking के couple of personnel as well. And तब से announcement हुआ था. So before all that, we'll get to that later in the episode. And before all that, we'd like to welcome you, and we'd like to know a little bit more about you and a little bit about Jetking for the viewers who are not extremely aware. हमें तो पता है, मेरे घर के बाजू, like I was discussing with Bhavik when we started this, that next to my house, like 2 kilometers from my house, there's a training center of Jetking. So I am very
Nice.
well aware of Jetking. But for the
Mhm.
audience who would like to know, please shed some light. Yeah.
Sure, amazing. So Siddarth Bharwani, I'm part of this company called Jetking. We are the third generation in the business, and fundamentally, ये company चालू हुई थी from as a war surplus brand. It used to be called Nav Bharat Radio, started by my grandfather. And post the partition in 1947, this was established as a war surplus, electronic surplus import-export business. Around the 50s or 60s, he pivoted into manufacturing do-it-yourself radio kits. So at that stage, there used to be these beautiful boxes with different components of radios, and you had a manual, and you used to just plug in the components together to create a radio of that time, which is in the 60s. That business went on for about 2 decades, and then we pivoted into manufacturing of televisions, which was a venture started off by my dad. And during that time, there was some kind of ban on broadcast media on television, and we had to raise funds for the business. So in 1986, around Jan, sometime 1986, the company went IPO and raised funds for largely the television business. However, because of political tension at that stage, the IPO was not too successful, and the television manufacturing business could not generate as much capital. So during the same time, there was an IT boom that was happening in the West, and to look for inspiration, to look for new ideas, my dad traveled towards America and said, there is an entire software boom that is going on. All of this software will need a lot of hardware maintenance at the back end. At the back end, he's a trainer at his heart. He's a passionate trainer. And what he ended up doing was starting a training business around hardware and networking. So do-it-yourself hardware networking training was started back in the 90s. In 92 odd, he started franchising. And since then, till now, we've been at the forefront in IT, IMS, launching different type of courses in technology, be it cloud computing, ethical hacking, cybersecurity, blockchain, metaverse. We launched these courses largely in IT, IMS because as a business, as a company, we feel like being in technology is one of the foremost things you can do as a business to make sure that you're at the forefront of technology, right? And at its peak, we had almost 186 centers across India, and we had a training capacity of almost 100,000 students that we could train every year. At its peak, we've trained 90,000 students in one single year. Now, when COVID came in 2020, almost 75% of the business had to shut down because of close proximity in the centers. And we came down to about 50 centers in just a matter of 12 months. So legacy built over almost 3 decades was closed down in 3 months, literally. That's when we sat as a team and said, what is it that we can do to bulletproof ourselves from the macro environment in the long run? So COVID happened, a pandemic happened, and there will be a lot more epidemics and pandemics that will come in our lifetime. But we sat down and we said, what is it that we can do in terms of our investment understanding that bulletproofs our future as a company and as a family for that matter. So me and my brothers were toying around with Bitcoin. We were seeing what it is because it was a technological capital base, right, that was being built over time, which was proving itself every year. So we came across Bitcoin in 2017, and from there we were just tracking it in our personal capacity, seeing how the tech is, how blockchain is evolving, what's the community being built. And in 2020 is when Michael Saylor took this position of seeing how to build Bitcoin on its balance sheet. We tracked him for 2 years, and in March of 2022, we spent a lot of time with our board and made them understand about what Bitcoin is and why we think it is one of those investments that gives you a better return than anything that has happened in the last 15 years. So you look at real estate. Real estate is a very illiquid asset in India. It's very difficult to move it. It's very difficult to sell it. There's X number of taxes around it. You look at gold, it moves in its trajectory of 7, 8%, 9%. There is equity. However, equity also is centralized to an extent where there's one person or two people. Management can always shake. So we said, what is the one asset that kind of counters all of these? And it came to be that it was Bitcoin. So in March of 2022, we took a position in as our investment policy, wherein we said we'll allocate 25 to 30% of all the investable surplus that we have in the business into Bitcoin. And slow and steady, we acquired about 5 Bitcoin in March of 2022. And thereafter, there was certain implications in tax, certain implications, regulatory clarity wasn't coming out. So we said we'll take a hold in 2023, and we were observing what is happening. It was a wait and watch game. And coming into March 2024 is when we said, okay, fine, this asset has been institutionalized. Jan of 2024 is when there was ETFs happening in the West. And one of the biggest questions we kept asking ourselves is that why is India not taking position? Why is India not talking about it? Why should we be scared? Like, there is nothing to be, this asset is something that we believe in. It is taxed. It is regulated to some extent. The ban is over. Let's just take a more forward approach. And in November of 2024 is when we established it as our Bitcoin Treasury Reserve asset.
Wow,
So
that's
the
quite a
journey.
journey. Yeah. And I'm sure, like आपने जो बोला था, and from the time you've seen a lot of change over the past years, like since the inception of Jetking, and there've been several pivots, if I'm not wrong. So this, I think the timing was right, and 2020 was a time where a lot of businesses faced this challenge. And like you rightly said, a lot of people had been observing what Michael Saylor was doing, because a very niche group of people in India were actually, पहले तो cryptocurrency market is small, and in that Bitcoin only space is smaller, and the importance of owning Bitcoin, a handful of people know. And
Sure.
to understand that is, something which is marvelous. And you're one of the Jetking is one of the first publicly listed company on Bombay Stock Exchange, which is openly come out and told that they hold Bitcoin on its treasury reserve, which will gain results in the future. And we'll talk more about the structuring and stuff in a few minutes. Bhavik, do you have any questions for
Yes,
Siddarth?
yes. So you started in March, right? March 2022. So
That's right.
आपने announce किया था उस time पे, or like, was there
So
any news in?
there was no news per se. So what we were doing is we
Sure.
wanted to make sure that we are going through the regulatory process, which is governing us. So Bombay Stock Exchange and SEBI are the two bodies which we have to make sure that we are list of obligations that we have to kind of come out with. What we did at that stage is we created enough and more information on our annual report. Now, if anyone was tracking our business at that stage, they would understand that, okay, fine, this company is looking at Bitcoin. As a small market cap company, there is not so much noise that we wanted to make, because it's not something that we were looking to do as a matter of prachar. So it was more of a fact that there is something that we are doing to see how this technology is going to evolve and see how's the reaction in the regulatory space. So we went ahead and for the last 3 years, we filed our annual reports, and those annual reports had exact details about Bitcoin. So we were doing a slow and steady game.
Right. How was it when Bitcoin crashed to 15,000? Like, how was your board's reaction when you entered at 45?
Sure. So generally, they say that. So they say, or Warren Buffett says this very well, that fear comes from not knowing what you're doing, and your conviction shakes when you think that there is something wrong here. What we did was we wanted to liquidate a lot of the other assets that we were holding and buy more Bitcoin, because we've seen that journey happen over 17 in 20 and 21. So as Saylor says, that Bitcoin volatility is not a flaw, it's a feature. And this feature is largely when it allows you to come into the asset class, explore, study, learn, and you go deeper into it as the price falls, and you get deeper into it as the price grows. So because of course there were certain people who said that maybe we should sell it, maybe we should maybe trim our losses, maybe call it off. But it was more of a conviction based approach. We said that we're not in here to trade, we're not here to look at the short term or the long term. We want to see what's the minimum holding period is 20 years, for example, and then we decide what we, up until that time, we keep buying, we try and buy Bitcoin even in small percentages every single day. So that was the thought process. And strategically we did not shift, right? We were like, this is what we're doing, and we don't need to sell, we don't need to do anything. We're not traders, we're not booking profits, we're not booking losses. We're holding it to bulletproof our future by holding this asset.
Yeah, awesome.
So
Beautiful.
a couple of questions there, and if you're not comfortable answering those, sure, we could, obviously skip that. But is there a particular frequency or a set? ठीक है कि इस quarter में there is this much allocation. We're not going into exact figures, but okay. I mean, you did mention that there was 30%, of the investment surplus that was allocated to this. But in addition to that, is there a like अगर आप देखोगे तो नाइब ब्यूकेले, he buys one Bitcoin every day. So is there a particular frequency like this that Jetking follows? And is there resistance within the company? I'm sure you are the board member, so you'd be better able to convince the whole company per se. But अगर आप MicroStrategy से अगर compare करोगे, so he was the CEO and then he stepped down and became the chairman to actually completely focus on this. So is there a person or an entity or a figure like that at Jetking? Yeah, it's a collective decision.
No, so luckily, so if you see what happened in 2022 was we started off with an investment policy, right? As soon as the investment policy kicked off, there was results that people saw in terms of the appreciation of the asset. Of course, because of the bear market or the volatility in the asset, it came back down. Now the board collectively decided that this is what we're doing as an investment policy. So there was no resistance, there was no gray area in terms of what it was doing. But generally speaking, it is a risk-taking appetite, right? A lot of people, and ultimately running a public limited company, there is a shareholder value protection that we have to always think of, because there is a lot of shareholders who you need to make sure that there is nothing which is super extreme, right? So luckily the board was fully aligned towards what we were doing in terms of the investment policy. And when we started it off, it was only 20-25%. So the risk to reward ratio was valid at that stage. In November of 2024, what we did after that was created whatever excess capital is generated in the business, not looking at any other investments that we've done. We will go ahead and put the excess capital in Bitcoin. Now, as soon as we did that, the idea was to see whenever we have excess capital, we park it into Bitcoin. And that's the reason we've reached about 15 odd Bitcoin so far. And ultimately now, because of the way the business is structured, what is the plan is to go aggressively and raise capital. So raise capital by two instruments. One is equity and the other one is debt. And while we're issuing new equity, the idea is to bring in like-minded people who believe in Bitcoin. So if you don't believe in Bitcoin, there are 4,000 other stocks that you can be a part of. There's 100 different investments that you can do. We are not looking to build our cap table, for example, with people who we have to convince around Bitcoin, there are enough and more Bitcoin believers who are looking to kind of partner up with us. So once that capital comes in, we're looking to do about 3 raises a year from here on, and the idea is to then whatever raise we end up doing is for both. It's going to be for 2 different segments. One is building an education block around Bitcoin and improving our education. Being in IT and IMS, it kind of complements being into Bitcoin as well. So a Bitcoin education application is something that we are building out, which is an AI model for understanding Bitcoin in regional Indian languages. So that is one part. The second part is strengthening our existing offline business or a hybrid business that we're currently running and offer Bitcoin courses there. And the third part is whatever excess is built from here, we park it in Bitcoin. So as and when the business is kind of moving towards the strategy that we are implementing, whatever excess money comes in goes into Bitcoin.
Wow.
It doesn't
I
matter.
mean,
The price doesn't matter for us. We are holding
yeah,
it. We are doing it for the. So let's say our average board age is 40. So the next 20 years is about buying. So we keep buying. It doesn't matter. We don't look at the prices every day. We don't look at the portfolio every day. We sit there and see how we can improve our business and generate more fiat, which is more cash, and then hold Bitcoin.
perfect. So आपने जो बोला equity and debt. So I want to show something on screen, and then we'll discuss more about this because, yeah. So this is what MicroStrategy as a company is doing. And
Sure.
for those who are not aware and who are viewing this for the first time, MicroStrategy is still a business intelligence company, and they've been around since 1980s. So they had a similar problem. कि 2020 में they had excess cash on hand, almost 500 million of it. And Michael Saylor, जो है, the then CEO of MicroStrategy, he did not know where to park his money. And that's when he decided to explore Bitcoin. And that's when he started dipping his toes on it. तब जाके like धीरे धीरे करके he increased his stack of Bitcoin over the years. Last year, अगर आप देखोगे, October onwards, he issued something called a 21-21 plan. Basically, 21 billion in equity, 21 billion in debt. Now, their objective was to raise this over a period of 3 years, if I'm not wrong. But
2
they
years, yeah.
maxed out 2 years, sorry. So they maxed out, they're almost 18 billion into the not experiment, I'd say, into the objective of what they want to do. And they've raised this through convertible debt, and they've raised this through ATM, at the money share selling. And now they've ventured into preferred stock. Now, these are the options which are available for the masses to get indirect exposure to Bitcoin who cannot actively hold Bitcoin or who are not allowed to. US में ऐसा है where many people are skeptical and many people don't have the access, and not many people are comfortable going through the exchange route. उन्हें Coinbase access नहीं करना है. They don't want to go to Kraken and buy stuff. So this is the only way they can access it, through MicroStrategy. So MicroStrategy became a proxy Bitcoin company where the fate of MicroStrategy is now heavily tied to Bitcoin. So do you see like that happening with Jetking in the near future sometime?
Sure. So ultimately, it is what we are banking on, right? So say MicroStrategy at this stage is creating a Bitcoin treasury business. So ultimately, Sailor as well as us would believe the fact that because of how Bitcoin is built, it's finite, right? There will be a time, say by 2032, when Bitcoin, or 2033, where Bitcoin price will be inaccessible and the mining rewards will also reduce significantly. Now it's the race to hold that much Bitcoin, and specifically for an equity business. So MicroStrategy is not a fund nor a VO fund. A fund generally has to book profits. It has to pay its OPEX, and it needs to generate profit to its investors. In our case, it is directly and indirectly proportionate to what we are holding on our balance sheet. So like we've seen in the last 2 cycles, the prices will keep going up and down, and ultimately the more you stock for yourself. So today in India, besides us who's come out and said, okay, fine, we've taken this position on Bitcoin, there's a lot of private players who are holding Bitcoin and they believe in the technology of Bitcoin. Just because of regulation is not clear exactly what is going on, people have not come out and openly spoken. A lot of the businesses, because of this regulation, have shifted to Dubai, shifted to Singapore, and they're working it out of there. Now, ultimately, using your equity engineering to keep buying Bitcoin, or your debt engineering to buy Bitcoin, becomes a business model in itself. So far, people are quite surprised with how Michael Saylor has been moving on with his debt raise. So I think he's figured out a glitch. He's figured out a glitch or a hack in the equity-led Bitcoin model, wherein he can keep issuing equity over time and keep buying Bitcoin. And that equity that he's issuing already has a price impact because of Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, no other asset class gives you that kind of to the minute, to the second value of Bitcoin. And ultimately, if you're holding that significant chunk, you end up having the gain on your balance sheet. So it depends. Today, MicroStrategy is trading at 2x the value of Bitcoin that it's holding. Metaplanet is also at, I think, 2x. Maybe there is a possibility. So there's about 60 or 70 odd publicly listed companies that are holding Bitcoin balance sheet across the world so far, and different people are holding it at different. So the multiple is different. So my point is that ultimately it becomes a jurisdictional capacity to hold Bitcoin, and that company who has ended up holding significant amount of Bitcoin will appreciate over time in value. So the models will be very different. The models will be very unique, and every company will come up with its own playbook by learning from each other.
For sure. So that's what, like, आपके capital markets में US, there are a lot of options. This is as per my understanding. There are a lot of options available to raise money through equity and debt. Is the same applicable in India as well?
Ultimately, there are avenues, but it depends on how you're building out your strategy. So for us, in the beginning, we are looking to build out a Bitcoin cap table, which is a community of Bitcoin holders who believe in Bitcoin only, and they want to capitalize the business to an extent where we start holding Bitcoin on our balance sheet and build out the story. So from the different, so you have FPOs available, you have QIPs, you have preference issue, all the equity options that you have currently. We're looking to kind of make use of all of them.
So ये कहना चाह रहे हो आप कि as company becomes big, वो थोड़ा easy होगा fund raise करना. And regulations के बारे में, like what are the regulations you are facing from the government, like SEBI के, like SEBI or BSE or NSE, like are they fine? What are the internal things that you can share regarding Bitcoin?
So generally speaking, I cannot share too much of the internal thing, being a price sensitive information. But the idea is,
Right.
so far whoever I have interacted, be it in SEBI, be it in Bombay Stock Exchange, be it in some people in Ministry of Finance, I think the general understanding is that this technology is important more than the price of Bitcoin, more than what is going to happen to Ethereum, or what is the price going to be. The technology of blockchain is super important, right? And people understand this. They are, of course, the government has its own challenges that they want to make sure that there's no misuse of it, so that people do not. There are anti-money laundering problems. There's exchanges that are going bust. We've seen what happened to WazirX recently. There was a massive hack. People lost a lot of money. So they have a fair. The government has a fair problem to solve, and the reservation is also fair. So they have to make sure that they take those cautionary steps to make sure that everything is in line. So far there is, on a one-to-one basis, there's not too much resistance that has come across. But because it's such a new asset class, I mean, because people know Bitcoin, so we might think that Bitcoin's been for a while, but it's only 16 years old. I mean, the asset in its whole is only 16 years old. For us to think that our government should be adopting Bitcoin or making it a treasury reserve asset or something on their own balance sheet is a very, very tall ask. And countries don't work like this. Countries have to plan 100 years in the future, right? So once they are looking at 100 years in the future, their regulators at the bottom have to make sure that whatever regulation they come out with is a long-term regulation. They cannot keep altering it or moving it around. So my point is that so far I don't think there is resistance. There are challenges from RBI to make sure that this doesn't become that currency transaction, which is a fair challenge. Every country would want to protect its sovereign currency, and that's what RBI is looking to do. So I personally feel that Bitcoin as an asset class is not, people are not as scared as they used to be 5 years ago, possibly.
Yeah, you said कि people are interested in the technology. They do, like price doesn't matter. So blockchain. So like उनको लगता है कि blockchain technology is superior. That's
Sure.
what you are saying.
So ultimately, if you see the application of blockchain, so today, if I want to create, so even if you look at any kind of gaming solutions which end up giving you some kind of reward per se, a token kind of reward or loyalty point reward, you have to do it in a very Web2 fashion. Blockchain technology makes it real time. Today, if you see the blockchain technologies, we are seeing AI and agents conversing pretty much everywhere. The AI agent wars that are taking place.
Yeah.
Now, if AI agent wanted to create a bank account, for example, he would not be able to walk into ICICI or HDFC and open a bank account. What will be his bank account? What will be his capital? His capital would be Bitcoin. His capital would be different blockchain infrastructure. So tomorrow, if AI has to scale and AI models have to improve, what economy will they operate in? They will operate in the blockchain economy, and considering its economy, they have to have transactions which can be different, 100,000 different types of tokens. So my point is that ultimately the transaction economy for AI or anything in the future, or even its multi-planetary transactions, it has to be blockchain. It cannot be the standard World Wide Web.
So it will all leads to Bitcoin, right? Like, or do you see there many blockchain
No, so
currencies?
pretty much, so of course, like
What do you
so
think?
2020, we had about 25,000 tokens. Today, there's 3 million north of
There are
tokens.
millions of
There's a lot of noise around this, and it is in every new space. So when you see the whole application development, when Android Play Store and the Apple Play Store started in 2008, roughly, there was one smartphone app that was coming up every minute. So I think at this stage, that is what's happening over time. A lot of the tokens are just being launched, and the use case and the adoption is going to be a journey, right? But ultimately, what has proved itself so far? Bitcoin has proved itself so far. The network has proved itself so far. The network has not been able to get hacked. All the transaction finality has always been on point. The network is secure and steady and safe. It's never been down. It's 99.98% uptime roughly at all times. So my point is, so far, all of the adoption use cases, whatever has to happen in blockchain, it's Bitcoin that has been the supreme leader. And I think for the longest time, it will be that one specific asset that will create this entire digital economy for humans and AI to kind of transact. So that becomes a blockchain tech.
Yeah, but I guess the people in India, or maybe people in the regulation, doesn't understand the fundamental difference between Bitcoin and other currencies, because Bitcoin is the only decentralized and censorship resistant thing. Every other coins are somewhat centralized. So Ethereum,
Right.
Solana, everywhere, like it doesn't run on electricity, right? Like so.
I don't know if I should say this, but I blame
Yeah, please,
these.
no problem.
I just think the way these influencers work. Influencers are the ones who are unfortunately are the bad actors in something like this. My coin did this, I went 100% up. My coin did that, I went 3000x up. Take this coin, do that coin. I think that whole greed that is of the individual is spoiling the natural progression of understanding Bitcoin. I'd seen a beautiful chart that said you get into this Web3 or the crypto space by getting into Bitcoin. You think that you will find the next Bitcoin, which is never going to be there, and you get into all this shit coins and all this nonsense that is going on, and then you come back into Bitcoin because you know it's the most superior asset class, and the only thing you should be doing is parking your capital into Bitcoin. Now, ultimately, I mean, we are in a place where digital noise is very prevalent, but people have to filter that noise to really get into Bitcoin, because any sort, if today also there was that we had taken a position in our investment policy in 2022, we had taken some Ethereum as well. What we realize is that Ethereum as a asset class might be good, or as a platform might be good, but it's not something we understand. It's not something that we want to hold for the long time. It's not something that we want to hold forever, for example. So let's sell it. We'll sold it and we bought Bitcoin against it. So my point is that you have to believe in a bigger objective than just money, which is to possibly safeguard some sovereignty of your own capital. So today, if you have money, the thing, say you have X amount of money, you take that money and you put it in the bank. Your bank is giving you 6-7%. If you put that back into Bitcoin, you're holding that money, and ultimately it is in your control. It's in your capacity. um, I'm not saying centralized banks are bad or anything like that, but if you have an option today, which we did not have an option 15 years ago, if we had an option today to keep our money more flexible, more active, it's growing about 40 to 50% every year. Of course, it will go down, but if you have the conviction, then you can hold it for the long term. So ultimately, money is more valuable when you make sure that it's in your control.
Right.
With the onset of in the Bitcoin spot ETF in US last year, and we've seen since that everything has changed, and you have institutions like BlackRock and Fidelity, etc., come into the space, and they're openly advocating for a 2 to 5% allocation, be it institutional or individual capacity. And these are legitimate people in the space, like they have been around for decades, and they are openly coming and telling. And agar ab BlackRock का एक report था which was apparently leaked, and in that it says 86% allocation to Bitcoin. So we will like not even consider that. We're not talking about that. But do you see the Indian Bitcoin ecosystem grow to a place where something like a ETF or a mutual fund will be launched anytime in the near future, say 1 or 2 years down the line?
So I think as soon as we have regulatory, so as soon as RBI comes back and says, okay, fine, this is how we look at Bitcoin as an asset, right? And ultimately, I think they will. Once you have that, it's going to open the floodgates. I know personally there's large fund houses with a market cap of 20-30,000 crores waiting for this opportunity.
The stamp of approval.
Unfortunately, the opportunity is just waiting. It's just that small foot in the door that needs to happen, wherein once RBI says something, it'll move a lot of these opportunities. So I think in the next 2 years, large fund houses will come out and say, okay, fine, we have this option as to invest in Bitcoin through these ETFs. If you see in 2022, at some stage there was a Aditya Birla blockchain discovery fund that was launched.
Okay.
Out of that, their fund, so they was already registered with SEBI, and the fund was supposed to be buying digital assets as well as investing in digital asset companies. But there was, again, because of regulations at some stage, because of maybe not being able to take a position, they did not scale the fund, or I don't know if it's still there or not. But my point is that there are these large fund houses also looking at this asset class. They're not going to miss out the opportunity over time. It's only about the fact that as soon as there is that sanctity around Bitcoin that comes in, and it's being openly discussed, it's been openly spoken about beyond that this was a scam or beyond this exchange shutdown. So Bitcoin as an asset class will gain its merit, I think, in the next 24 months in India at least.
Yeah, I mean, last year, though, we've been telling and we've been discussing, having this discussion that BlackRock and Geo have come together in some sort of collaboration, and they've, I think, filed for a mutual fund also, like to start the brokerage services. So I personally feel that might happen by next year tops. So that's why I was curious what your take was on this.
No, so the idea is, I mean, what the point that we were kind of on is the fact that large institutions are looking at this tech and they're seeing how they can improve their services as well as the experience for their customers, right? So the point is that ultimately blockchain is going to become a daily conversation over the next 24 months in India. AI is going to become a daily conversation over the next 24 months. It is already there. The government is talking about building something over the next 10 months, which is the unique AI built for India. But my point is that there are large institutions that are coming up, and Bitcoin has so far been a bottom up approach. So the bottom up approach has been the fact that the community was built first, the use case was built first, and then there was movement, and now the institutions are adopting it. So it will move right up there across countries, across companies, and it's just a matter of time.
We saw how excited you were when Bitcoin hit 100K, and आपका वो Twitter पे आपका video भी है. It's quite famous, I'd say.
Right.
So, do you have, and we won't hold you to it, and do you have any particular, base case, bull case, bear case model for the next 5 years or 10 years? Because it's an asset which you need to hold for 4 years. That's what we always advocate. And
Sure.
price is something what draws most normies into this. And that's why we tend to keep that a very small part of the conversation, but it is important nonetheless. So, what do you think?
So I do not want to make predictions on price. I am not. I don't see it as something that I can anticipate. I think as an asset class, as something that it kind of beats my holding my money, my company money in asset class, which is depreciating over time. If you see INR is depreciating by about 30% every 10 years to the dollar. Now, every time there is any kind of, so the world is getting global, even if we are taking in for foreign exchange, we have to convert that foreign exchange within a specific period of time so that we convert it into INR. Now, instead of holding INR, I am holding it in Bitcoin. Now, tomorrow, I will leave the price predictions to the expert like Michael Saylor, who knows exactly the modeling that they've done. But ultimately, the way Bitcoin is going, the idea is to keep beating inflation. The idea is to keep beating currency depreciation. The idea is to hold as much Bitcoin as possible so that our shareholders unlock value holding our company as an investment. So yeah, beyond that, there's 1,000 models that can say Bitcoin price will be this and that, but I personally feel that I don't like too much noise as a person. I do not like too much noise. I don't like creating that much noise around something. If you believe in something, just put on your blinders and then just go all out with it. So that's how I think it will be. And in the future, even if it's like in 10 years, if Michael Saylor's models say that it's going to be 13 million in 21 years. So that keeps Bitcoin in the next 10-year range to about $1 million a coin. So that's about, by then it'll be like 10 crores a coin in India. I mean,
Yeah.
it's something that we need to, as a community, as a country, we need to start talking about it. We need to have those questions. There should be a push, and that push should be beyond personal agenda. It should be bigger than ourselves, and I think that's when we'll be able to openly talk about it. So like, for example, I had mentioned to you earlier that we are doing a Bitcoin GPT application. Now, I'm going to try and keep it as cheap as possible. So maybe 50 rupees or 100 rupees per month kind of a subscription, wherein people just download it and start understanding what Bitcoin is. So once you start those understanding, then you ask the right question. And then if there's a large enough community doing that, hopefully then that's when there is more regulations and more clarity that is coming around this asset class.
So you also mentioned about some blockchain courses and Bitcoin courses. So,
Right.
like, is it ready or is it in the
So
process?
we already launched blockchain courses
Hmm.
last year. That was more of a career course wherein if you want to become a Solidity programmer or if you wanted to do a
Nice.
course in Metaverse, so you could enroll with
Hmm.
us. This one that we are doing next is only a Bitcoin focused BTC GPT, so which is a BTC AI bot or agent for that matter, who will be only talking to you in a conversational text around Bitcoin. You have
Nice.
any kind of doubts, any kind of questions. So it's a model that we are developing over time, and we've done a soft P MVP of it, and we're looking to release that in anywhere between April and May once it's fully
Nice,
go-to-market
nice.
strategy is done. So the thought is to, like I said, this is the education model that we'll be building, and most everyone can use it. Tomorrow, if I have someone who wants to learn it in Kannada, in Telugu, in Punjabi, so we'll eventually come up with about 12 highly spoken models in languages in India, and then it should be able to address so that down the last mile person can also access Bitcoin as an understanding asset class.
There's a small feedback there, and I'm sure the team must have obviously thought about it. If you could Indianize the context, and अगर आपके जो भी figures and numbers हैं, inflation related or any comparison related, to keep it in INR, because what we've seen is अब तक जो भी हो रहा है, all the communication, everything is done in terms of dollars or euros, etc. And the global south is left out. And we see the dollar hegemony continue for a long time. Indians don't feel the personal connect when they hear dollars. They're like, yeah, theek hai, it's so big. Then if you have something in INR, they're like, cool. They instantly relate to it. So these are my two sets. But yeah, I mean, we'll share more feedback with you with time on how we can improve or how we can contribute to it as well.
Definitely. So my idea is, so like whatever conversations that I'm generally having with anyone, I have kept it all in INR to Bitcoin.
Nice.
And most of those conversations are because, I mean, before the dollar, for example, the supreme currency at that stage was the pound. Before that, there was, I think, the Swiss franc. And ultimately, if you see, government-owned currencies or country-owned currencies have a lifeline. I think dollar has been there from 75, and I think 100-year lifeline is what it has, and ultimately it is all going to move to Bitcoin over time. And yeah, so my conversations are mainly in INR to Bitcoin, and that's the reason I said maybe it'll be 10 crores, or right now it's hovering around a crore, and INR to Bitcoin is what we generally also speak.
Awesome. Thanks, Siddarth. Bhavik, आपकी कुछ any questions which we may have missed out? Before that, any closing thoughts for the newbies who are coming to the space, the 2024 batch?
So I personally think don't start from the price, start from the tech. Before you see what has happened to Bitcoin over the last 16 years, see what is happened to the technology over the last 16 years instead. Start with not the exchange, start with the white paper. Look at that white paper, question that white paper. It's a beautifully written 9-pager that tells you what the problem with money was, what tells you the problems with transaction, and how a peer-to-peer electronic cash management system should work in a normal economy. So start there, educate yourself even before buying anything, and don't think you're missing out. Don't FOMO into anything. Bitcoin is here to stay. You will get a chance to enter into Bitcoin when it's cheap. Compared to the next 20 years, it is cheap any which ways. My personal parting thought would be screw the other coins. Let the other coins be for influencers and people who want to pump and dump things. Bitcoin is supreme. No one can mess with Bitcoin. It's never been messed before. The technology has given birth, and just stick to Bitcoin.
Yeah, amazing.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for your
Thank
valuable
you.
time, and
Thank
we'll
you.
hope to see you soon.
Sure.